More on all these developments. Let's bring in Fox News contributor and former House Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz. Jason, if you were chairman again, would this be the subject of a lot of hearings, or would you leave it up to what the FBI is doing and what the Senate is doing in uncovering some of this stuff?
Well, Dave, thanks for having me. You've got to have a simultaneous congressional investigation with the Department of Justice. This is very serious, and you use the lever of power to manipulate a presidential election. You know, Democrats yelled and screamed for a long time about saving democracy.
Right.
Well, this is the subversion of democracy like we've never seen. I think you got to call up James Comey, Brennan, Clapper, a host of, there's probably a few, I shouldn't say a host, but a few others that are going to need to provide more congressional testimony once again. I think they're going to plead the fifth. My guess is they raise their hand and plead the fifth. There's too much contradictory information. And now that the new documents have been unveiled and declassified, thanks to good work by John Ratcliffe, Tulsi Gabbard, and ultimately President Trump by empowering them, then it's a whole different set of questions than we would have been able to ask back in the day.
The bottom line, though, is that there was a collusion, and the collusion was between Hillary Clinton's campaign, the Open Society. George Soros's Open Society apparently was part of the discussions, too, about how they were going to get the FBI and the CIA and the CIA. They were all working together and to weaponize, of course, to politicize and weaponize the FBI and CIA. It's something that goes back to the Nixon era. We thought we got rid of it with the church committee hearings. We didn't. It came back to haunt us. I'm just wondering if the FBI can ever clean up its act, if it will always be a potential for politicalization that could lead to things like this again.
Well, we give special police powers, and we're supposed to have checks and balances. I think one of the things that's ripe for potential prosecution is FISA abuse. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act was intended to be a way that we could use subpoena power to surveil things between communication, in part between Americans or people on U.S. soil and foreign intelligence. Now, that was abused. I believe that's the allegation. That's where the evidence is pointing. If you use the so-called Steele dossier, which was highly discredited, and use that as the predicate to justify to a federal judge that you need to be able to spy on somebody, which evidently they did, then, and you knew that it was false information you were presenting to the court, or should have known that it was false information to the court, then you should be prosecuted for that. If you or I did that, or your wife, or anybody did that, you lie to the court knowingly and willingly, there's got to be a consequence. Yeah. How many movies do we see where somebody's held in contempt, right? But it never seems to happen in real life when it comes to government officials.
That's right. And these new documents, I mean, this guy who worked for Open Society, he's a senior vice president of Open Society, which is George Soros's group. Leonard Bernardo, I think is his name. He said, well, later on, and I'm quoting him now, later on the FBI will put more oil into the fire. So it appears that he knew what the FBI was up to. I mean, again, it's just an appearance, but don't we need to hear from him about some of the statements that were uncovered that he made?
Yeah, and part of this is Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the head of the DCCC at the time. Her name pops up in some of these documents. So, yeah, what were they talking about? What were they referring to? How were they foreshadowing what the FBI was going to do? And then what's really interesting is somehow our intelligence agencies were able to surveil what the Russians had been surveilling, and they evidently were foreshadowing that Joe Biden, for instance, was going to be the very first one to unveil this. Voila! He's the one that does it. And so there is some really interesting but seedy stuff. And I don't think we've heard the end of it. Democrats would say, "Oh, it's old news." And I'm like, "Oh, really?
No. This is fresh stuff that's been uncovered." Very quickly, I want to try to get this in because today Trump announced he was firing the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and a Fed governor is resigning, and yet the Senate is about to go on recess, so they won't be able to confirm any new appointments. The president has written to Truth Social saying, look, hold off until you can confirm my appointees. What do you think?
Look, Senator Mike Lee was one of the ones from Utah who was helping to lead this charge. Donald Trump was also, the president was always like, hey, we have hundreds of people that have not yet had Senate confirmation. You can't just go take the month of August off. I'm sorry, but this comes about once in a lifetime that you get the House, the Senate, the presidency. And just because Chuck Schumer is going to slow it down, you got to go get these people confirmed or go into recess and allow the president to actually do the recess appointments. But you can't have it both ways.
Recess appointments, I think, is what's going to happen. Jason Chaffetz, great to see you, man. Thank you very much.